The purple-red marks on her neck looked nothing like a curling iron burn. I stood in the doorway of our master bathroom, the steam from her shower clinging to the air, watching my wife, Jessica, angle her head in the mirror. She dabbed concealer onto the cluster of bruises, her movements practiced, almost casual.
"Oh."
It just slipped. She'd said, not even looking at me, her voice tight. But I knew the shape of a burn, the angry red welt it leaves. This was different. This was the ghost of a mouth, a hungry one. The air in our pristine Chicago high-rise suddenly felt thin, suffocating. I saw her phone light up on the marble countertop, a name I didn't recognize flashing for a split second before it went dark. She glanced at it, then at my reflection in the mirror, and her eyes went cold, hard, like polished stones. That was the moment the floor fell out from under my world. I knew, with a certainty that chilled me to the bone, that my life was a lie, and the woman I loved was a stranger. If you genuinely enjoy our stories, please subscribe to the channel. Tell us where you're from, and what time it is right now. It's always fascinating to know how far our story flows. The first few weeks were a masterclass in gaslighting. Every question I had was met with a scoff, an eye roll, a sigh that painted me as a paranoid, insecure fool. "You're imagining things, Liam," she'd say, her tone dripping with a condescending pity that made my skin crawl. "Maybe you're stressed from work." She'd become a ghost in our home on North Michigan Avenue. The woman who used to greet me at the door with a kiss now barely looked up from her laptop. Her laughter, once the soundtrack of my life, was now reserved for hushed phone calls she'd take on the balcony. The glass door slid just shut. I started noticing the small things, the tiny cracks in the facade of our perfect marriage. Receipts from lavish dinners for two at Gibson's Bar and Steakhouse on Rush Street. Dated on nights she claimed she was working late. Credit card alerts for rooms at the Langham, a hotel we'd never stayed at together. She was cold, a stranger wearing my wife's face, and her cruelty was a slow-acting poison. She and her lover, whoever he was, felt untouchable, wrapped in a bubble of arrogance and deceit. One night I found a hotel valet ticket in her coat pocket. I sat in my car in the sterile silence of our parking garage, the flimsy piece of paper trembling in my hand, and for the first time in our 10-year marriage, I broke. A raw, guttural sob tore from my chest, the sound of a man whose heart had just been ripped out. That was the last tear I would ever shed for her. In that cold, concrete tomb, the grief died and something else was born. A quiet, calculated rage. The game had changed. She thought she was playing me, but I was about to write the rules. My revenge began not with a bang, but with a click. The click of a keylogger installing on her laptop. The click of a private investigator's camera shutter. I became a phantom, gathering the threads of her betrayal. The PI's name was Frank, a grizzled ex-cop who operated out of a dusty office in the Loop. His first report landed in my inbox like a bomb. Photos, Jessica, laughing with a man named Mark, a senior partner at her firm. Them holding hands across a table at a dimly lit bar. Them kissing in the shadow of a downtown alley, her body pressed against his. The smug look on his face, the triumphant glow on hers. It was a portrait of my humiliation. I funneled our joint savings into a new private account. I met with the best divorce attorney in Chicago, a shark named Diana, who smiled when I laid out the evidence. "We won't just divorce her, Mr. Hayes," she said, her voice like ice. "We'll dismantle her." The plan was a three-pronged attack: financial, social, and legal. I documented every lie, every stolen dollar she'd spent on her affair. I forwarded the PI's reports to Diana, building a mountain of evidence. The trap was set. All I had to do was wait for the perfect moment to spring it. The moment came on a crisp October evening. It was our 11th anniversary. Jessica had, with a theatrical flourish, booked a table at Alinea, a place we'd been on a waiting list for years. She wore a backless black dress, the picture of elegance, completely oblivious. She thought this was her victory lap. As the first course arrived, a delicate, artistic creation, I slid a simple manila envelope across the table. "Happy anniversary, Jessica," I said, my voice unnervingly calm. She smiled, a brittle, confused expression. "What's this?" she asked, her fingers tracing the edge of the envelope. "Open it." Inside were not anniversary cards or jewelry receipts. Inside were the photos. Her and Mark. The hotel receipts. The bank statements from the account I drained. I watched the color drain from her face, her perfect mask crumbling into dust. Her breath hitched. Liam, I can explain. But her phone buzzed on the table. A message from Mark, and then another from her boss, and another from her mother. In the 30 minutes before we'd arrived, Diana had executed the plan. An email containing a detailed, irrefutable summary of her affair, her misuse of company funds for hotel stays, with a partner and a formal notice of my divorce filing had been sent to the entire board of her company, her family, and our mutual friends. Her world was imploding in real time, right there at a 3-Michelin-star table. She stared at me, her eyes wide with a terror so profound it was almost beautiful. The smug, untouchable queen was gone. In her place was just a woman, naked and ruined. She tried to stand, but her legs gave out. She sank back into her chair, a broken, pathetic thing. Stood up, placed a $100 bill on the table, and walked out without looking back, the sounds of her quiet, desperate sobs following me into the cold Chicago night. The divorce was a formality. She was fired for gross misconduct. Her family, devout Catholics, disowned her. Mark the coward was also fired and immediately distanced himself from her, his own reputation in tatters. She was left with nothing but the designer clothes on her back and the crushing weight of her choices. I never saw her again, but sometimes, late at night, I hear about her through the grapevine, working a menial job in some far-off suburb, a shadow of the woman she used to be. Our high-rise apartment, once a symbol of our shared dream, now feels vast and empty, but it's a clean emptiness, a quiet peace. The city lights of Chicago glitter outside my window, a million little stars in a sea of black. I didn't win. Not really. We both lost. But I was the one left standing to turn off the lights.